Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the proudly Canadian riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Justin Trudeau wants to control the internet. In the last election, he promised to bring in 3 new laws to help him gain control over the internet. He passed the first law, Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Tax and Censorship Act. The second bill is now at the Senate. That is C-18, the Online News Control and Censorship Act. It could be the law by the end of June. His third law will be what he's calling the Online Harms Act, the silencer. Trudeau said he would introduce all 3 of those bills within the first 100 days of his re-election. Each one of these laws is bad for the freedom of expression. Each bill gives the government greater control over what can appear online. But that's not all they do. The Online Streaming Tax and Censorship Act was all about paying off Canada's telecom companies. The big telecom companies are among the most profitable and most powerful companies in Canada. They didn't want to compete with Netflix and Disney. For example, Bell owns Crave. So they lobbied the government to mummify the competition in red tape. The Online News Act is just a giant welfare scheme for legacy media, except it won't work. Google and Facebook would rather block news on their platforms than be extorted into paying money to dying legacy media companies which refused to innovate. The result of Google and Facebook blocking news will be Canadians having less access to local news. Trudeau claims his third law will be about protecting Canadians from online harms such as revenge porn and identity theft. What the Liberals originally proposed, though, was such a far-reaching attack on freedom of expression that nearly every organization in Canada objected to it. The Liberals panicked and went back to the drawing board. Since then, we have seen no action from the government to tackle the real harms, real crimes which occur every day online. Liberal actions speak louder than Liberal lies. The Trudeau Liberals decided paying off telecoms was more important than protecting Canadians. The Trudeau Liberals decided paying off the legacy media corporations was more important than protecting Canadians. The Liberals don't care about victims. They care about control. They care about paying off the powerful companies that keep the Liberals in power. Trudeau's agenda to tax and censor the internet has been a serious distraction from the real concerns of Canadians. Canadians are concerned about the constant calls from scammers. Canadians are concerned about the cyberbullying. They're concerned about the growing mental health crisis amongst teens and the now overwhelming evidence that the crisis is being driven by social media use. The big tech companies are censoring Canadians while strip mining their data for sale to the highest bidder. The early days of the internet were often compared to the Wild West, a time of pioneers striking out on their own with little government oversight. It was the lawless, chaotic, and dangerous Wild West. But the Wild West was not tamed by governments. What came next were the powerful railway corporations, private militias, and robber barons. Today we have big tech companies, online mobs, and tech bro billionaires. The Liberals have essentially cut a deal with big tech. Give a cut of the profits to Liberal-friendly corporations and censor the views Liberals don't like. And the companies can continue to profit off your privacy and personal liberty. Trudeau's corruption is coming to an end. Canadians will see a new sheriff in town. We'll put protecting Canadians ahead of protecting the profits of communist-loving corporations. I want to hear from you. Is it time to crack down on digital crime? It's getting smoky in here again. Oh. On Wednesday, Bob Picard fled Beijing. Once Mr. Picard was safely in Japan, he went on Twitter and told the world why he had just quit his job at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Since March of 2022, Bob Picard had been the Director of Communications for the Asian Infrastructure Bank. This is what he wrote on Twitter. Quote, I have tendered my resignation as the Global Comms Chief of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. As a patriotic Canadian, this was my only course. The bank is dominated by Communist Party members and also has one of the most toxic cultures imaginable. I don't believe that my country's interests are served by its AIIB membership. I saw with my own eyes the extent to which Communist Party hacks occupy key positions in the bank, like an in-house KGB or Gestapo or Stasi, end quote. Later in an interview, Picard said, quote, in the bank, just about every department has a Communist Party member, including my department. They always claim it is apolitical, but inside it's very political and Communist Party political, end quote. Under Stephen Harper, Canada declined to join this communist bank. Once Trudeau was elected, Canada's policy towards communists who control China shifted. In 2016, Trudeau announced Canadian taxpayers would purchase a 1% share in the bank at a cost of nearly $1 billion. Even after the communists kidnapped 2 Canadians, Trudeau continued to transfer your tax dollars to this communist-controlled bank. This is just one more example of why we need a public inquiry into communist interference in Canada. But Trudeau Liberals and their Bay Street buddies all thought that they could profit off the suffering of those living under a communist dictatorship. They thought they could gain money and power without Canada paying a price. They thought wrong. This week, the largest deployment exercise of air forces in NATO's history is taking place in Germany. And thanks to Trudeau, Canada is missing in action. The Canadian Armed Forces, including the Royal Canadian Air Force, are operating under what they called a reconstitution order. Under the Liberals, our military is disintegrating. Between increasing retirements and crumbling recruitment, Canada does not have women and men in uniform to perform basic functions such as training with our allies overseas. From the First Boer War through the World Wars to Korea, the Gulf, the Balkans, Afghanistan, and Iraq, there are 2 things that have always been the same. We fight overseas, and we fight alongside allies. That's why, although this government has never met the NATO commitment of spending 2% of GDP, the highly capable women and men in the Canadian Armed Forces have managed to effectively deploy our forces overseas. But after 8 years of Liberal corruption, waste, and mismanagement, the Canadian Armed Forces has been stretched so thin, the fabric is literally tearing apart. Under Trudeau, Canada has become a shadow of its former self. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.